And we're about to get started here. Hello there, for everyone who doesn't know me. I am Tom Malingo. I'm part of the Brandjectory team along with Michael Movitz and my lovely wife, Susan Bryanton. Very happy to have you all here today. For those of you who are joining us who do not know Brandjectory, Brandjectory is a platform for emerging brands in the natural, organic, health, wellness, food, beverage, personal care, beauty, anything related to pet food and alcohol. We are there to help you learn how to build an investable business and to learn how to work with, engage with, and meet with, learn from industry experts and industry investors. We do this through extensive and well-acclaimed knowledge base, a series of virtual meetings, some personal reach out and coaching, all with you, giving you the chance to learn and meet with and just connect with the people in the industry that can help you build the brand that you need to build to be successful. And with that, today we bring you Barbara Schandl. Barbara is the Insights Lead for Mondelez SnackFutures. Mondelez has a great relationship with Brandjectory, and we're excited about the relationship that we've been sharing with them, and we look forward to growing that relationship. They've been wonderful partners, and they're very interested in the ecosphere for young brands. So with that, I am going to very quickly turn this over to Barbara. I'm going to share my screen so that we can see her slides. So Barbara, I'm going to go on mute and turn this over to you. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Thomas. Thanks for having me today. Very excited. I see also very familiar faces, so it makes me even more happy. So you're going to, thank you. Great. So you're going to see my presentation. I tell you before we start, we can go to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. As Thomas said, I'm currently the Insights and Strategy Lead at SnackFutures as a strategic CVC. This is just a little bit of what I have been doing and also who I am as a person. I call myself a curiosity champion. So you might ask yourself, okay, what is that? So I'm an a consumer insights professional and innovation expert for, I would say, probably more than half of my life. And when people ask me or I explain to the friends of our daughter, they ask me sometimes, okay, what are you doing? You're working actually for Oreo and you work for Milka, but what are you really doing? And I'm explaining to them, I'm trying to find out what people like to have as a snack in the future. So that's basically my job. My job is going to find consumer problems or needs or even enhancing experiences and supporting that with our brands and products. So basically that's what I'm doing. I'm a researcher. I started my career in Nielsen, so more on the analytical side, before I started a long time in Kraft Foods in Austria, Vienna. And then my journey started. So my journey started and I did roles from global,
Baby,
regional.
I'm on a call.
Sorry? Okay, it was not me. The babe was not for me. So basically, so I did many roles. I did global roles, as I said, regional roles, local roles. I worked on all of our categories. And maybe just to point out, for a couple of years, we had also our headquarters for emerging markets in Vienna. That was really a long time ago. And I worked also for emerging markets. So I traveled a lot to countries like Russia, Ukraine, but also South Africa, North Africa. So all the former Eastern European part. And I think that's also where I started to develop more of my agile mindset because, we did a lot of work, we did a lot of research, not having a lot of budget. So we needed to adapt accordingly. So I needed basically to learn also to have little resources. And that's what I'm doing. I would say passion, positive energy are my friends. I'm more on the positive side. I always see the glass half full, and I always see actually a lot of opportunities. And try also my passion for people the consumer, to actually to the organization, but also trying to do this outside of the organization as well. What brings me joy is actually people. I think people is really have this natural curiosity in people and the world, the family, my family and friends and sports. So basically that's who I am as a person a little bit. As I said, I'm originally from Vienna and I live in Switzerland for the past 13 years. So I changed the country for the job. And when you hear me today saying the consumer and the shopper, it's basically for me because there's often conversations about should we call consumer, and I know there's also the customer, yeah. But at the end, we talk about people, right? I think that's important also to acknowledge. So when I refer usually to the people, human beings out there. Okay. Good, we can go to the next slide. Our session today is all about the consumer centricity. I talk about what it is because there is a lot of myth around it. Why should you care? You can also say, okay, why should I care about the consumer? And also at the end, I give you a little bit of some practical tips and tricks, what you can do. You can also do a lot yourself. It's not always that you need to work with a third party. I think that's maybe also interesting. You can get a lot involved yourself as well. And when we move to the next slide, and that's quite interesting because I looked a little bit up, there is all these definitions and there is a lot of articles, right? And it's defined, our Gartner research is characterizing consumer centricity as a capacity for an organization to understand those who buy from them and put them at the center of strategic decisions. Well, I don't know. I feel that's kind of dry. And now I tell you, to be good at consumer centricity, you must have all the functional mastery about insight generation, empathy, immersion, segmentation. You need to participate in ethnographics, in IDIs, in copy testing, in financial analysis. Yeah. So all of that is ideally if you would do. Yeah. No. Next slide. I'm just kidding. I'm just actually, it's not, I'm not saying it's not true. It's nice, and I can probably do that as a researcher, all of that, what you just saw. But it's very important to be really good at consumer centricity. You must embrace humanity. And I think that's, let that sink in a little bit. If we stay maybe a little bit on the previous slide, I want to just take a moment here to reflect. Because often in my life, in my professional career, I have been, being in situations where I would say, because you would say, what does it really mean? I would say, we don't know our consumer, but let's go out and find out how will this affect them? If you change something, right? If you change your packaging, if you change the brand, but also, if you invent something new, let's say you're not yet there and you do not know who is your consumer to try out and hypothesize, to go out and try to people, right? Again, how will this affect them? Is it something you might solve for them? Is it something you can help them with? Yeah. So again, it's more pragmatic as you think, but you need to embrace yourself. You also need to try to put yourself into people's shoes. Yeah. And sometimes you might be the consumer yourself, right? It depends really what you're doing. It also depends which industry you're working in. But you need to keep in mind, in most times, putting yourself into the people's shoes, yeah? And see the world from their eyes a little bit, because only if you have a complete picture, you might also find kind of things you want to solve for. And I know that's on a very high level because, I work in snacking. But if you think about it, it's at the end, it's not so far away because, also, I work for Mondelez, yeah, but I also want to solve for kind of problems and needs in the snacking industry, right? We want to make people happy. We want to enhance in experience, yeah. We want to bring joy back. And we'll talk about this in a second. So in the next slide, there is a very good article. And that has been around, not I would say for a couple of years. I'm not using, super old material, but it's actually from last year, and it's nothing really new. But consumer-centric companies are 60% more profitable than those that are not. Yeah. And this is a fact, that has been researched also. Yeah. And you can argue, okay, but why? What does this company really have? What maybe others, what do they do, what others don't do? Yeah. And I can tell you, very important, when you work for a bigger company, they have the executive buy-in. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. Also, when you're a small company, right? You as a founder, you need to have the buy-in. You need to actually stand for the consumer. You always need to ask the question, have you consumer evidence for this? Is there something we heard from the consumer? Yeah. So it's very important. We can all ground ourselves, and it doesn't matter if it's a small company or big company. They are actually, I would say, to a certain extent, consumer. We call it consumer obsession. So they're really consumer obsessed. Yeah, they are innovative. They collect and treasure feedback. Yeah, and they are very proactive. And they also try to personalize. Yeah, so that's also important. Yeah, so those companies, they're doing a lot of things, what other companies might not do or not to do to that extent. Yeah. And I would also say consumer centricity must be also more than just consumer understanding. Yeah. So there is a wider angle to it. Yeah. You can, if of course, it's important to understand the consumer. Yeah. To go out and maybe ask, to observe. Yeah. But it's more, once you have an understanding, once you have an insight, yeah, you as a brand and company, you need to put this into real insightful knowledge, and also magnify the voices of the people themselves. I know that's big, yeah, it's a big statement, yeah, but that's important. It's not just always understanding, because it also can be a fact, right? But its effect is not automatically an insight. It can also be a learning, and that's fine as well, yeah. And also trying to inject consumer learnings, into decision making, not at the beginning, not at the end of the journey, yeah, but really ongoing as well, yeah. It's doing consumer insight work is not a completed activity. It's not a one-off. It's not something you do one time and you never get back to. It's something you try to do on an ongoing learning process, yeah. And we in the company, it's also interesting. We're trying to move away from this validation, not fully, but we're trying really to learn more as a company, with our consumers, maybe co-create and also doing it together. Okay. So culture-wise, as I said, what is a very nice question is, have we consulted the consumer? Is always a powerful question, and is also a very powerful way to shape culture. And then what consumer evidence supports this? I can give you that, because I think when you start doing that and you start asking, those questions, yeah, it's a bit like a discipline. But in every meeting, it's like when somehow there is a consumer question, it's like, okay, think about it. Is it more you? Is it more what you think? And again, it might not be wrong, because you might have a hypothesis. You can go out, and test the hypothesis, yeah. But try to bring in the consumer in any form, shape as a human being. Okay. I was actually looking for some examples, and I have to admit I had the Amazon example in there, but I took it out. I was like, no, I take the Lego example, but I have actually a new example also for you. So, and I'm sure a lot of companies, when I talk now about it, it's like, oh, yes, this is really a company. They are embracing consumer centricity. I think all of us have a favorite. The company I really admire a lot, and you might not thought of that I show it because it has nothing to do with food or snacking, yeah, is Lego. Lego is one of the companies with a record of growth in the world. They have a revenue growth of almost 30% compared to a couple of years ago, compared, I think, to 2020. Yeah. So you can see some stats here. They achieve really strong growth while investing to build for the future, which I admire as well. So they're able to respond to the now, but at the same time, they're also investing to build a great future for the company. They tap into joy, they tap into childhood, that they create this joyfulness. Yeah. But why I wanted to show you this example, besides, the CEO is also a great support of consumer centricities. There is a little, you can see there is a little ladder on the bottom of the slide. And there was actually, I think it happens more often, there was a small boy and he lost his favorite character, you know. And I was actually, he wrote a letter to Lego, yeah. So he wrote a letter to, you can see the picture of the boy, and he wrote to Lego and saying, listen, I have lost my my favorite character, and Lego responded back. And they responded back, obviously they sent him the favorite character, but they responded back in the name of his favorite character. So the way, you know, they wrote back, you know, to him was really playing the character. And I think that's so simple and powerful. But again, you know, if you talk about consumer centricity, that masters consumer centricity, because they were talking the voice of the character, sending him obviously the character. So I found that quite cute. So I think, you know, that's a really cute example, very simple. There is another one on the next slide, and this is just something I found. I mean, I wanted really to bring in, you know, instead of the Amazon one, although, you know, they're also obsessed with consumer centricity. Yeah? But Liquid Death, you know, I find a really interesting example, because it's all about, you can say, you know, it's a water. Do we need another water? Or do we need a water in a can? I'm not so sure. Yeah. But the founder, you know, who's actually a graphic designer, was inspired, you know, and he was at a concert, right? And he was watching the audience, you know, they're drinking water, but they're drinking the water out of Monster can, like the, you know, Monster energy drink. So basically, you know, they refilled the can with water, yeah, you know, which addresses a fundamental consumer need about, you know, hydration, right? So people need to hydrate at a concert, you know, sometimes the concert is in summer, it's hot, yeah, but people need to constantly, they cannot drink only alcohol, they also need to drink water in between, yeah. And then he said to himself, okay, it's interesting, you know, the people actually, they are drinking that out of this can. So, and then the idea for basically Liquid Death was born, yeah. So he created this can, you know, and you know, everybody, when you went into a concert, right, and you saw people drinking Liquid Death out of the can, you know, you think, okay, these young children drinking, you know, what initially I thought was actually strong beer, you know, because whenever you saw the can, right, even my partner, he thought it's actually it's a kind of a strong alcoholic drink, yeah. But it's interesting also, because if you think about this generation, yeah, younger generation, Gen Z, is very important also, that they're not only drinking the water, but actually they're posting themselves with Liquid Death on social, yeah, because they wanna be seen with that, yeah. So very interesting to make. You can say it's about hydration. It's a need state, right? And hydration can be executed in so many different ways, but they executed it in a completely different way. Yeah. So I think that's quite. And there are many other examples. You know, I just took it because I thought, you know, talking about not another beverage is interesting. I thought it's interesting to talk about hydration. Yeah. So if you go to the next one, yeah, I don't know if we can actually do that, you know, in the chat. I'm putting also up the chat, yeah. So I want to see some activity maybe, because I will talk a lot. I have not really a poll, but I don't know if you can type in the chat, who do you think is most responsible when we talk first about the consumer satisfaction? Any idea? What do you think? Sorry, I forgot HR on the slide. I should have done that. Yeah, more. I wanna. It's quite obvious, but yeah. Actually, I like this response about, you know, yes, it's sort of all. I would have said it's me, right? All of you, me, you, all on the webinar. Yeah, so all of us. So basically, you can say yes, it's all of the above, because we all have different responsibility and different functions. Absolutely. But I like this one answer from yeah, like G, but I feel like A does it in organizations. Yeah, that's true. You know, and also it's often consumer insights. Yeah, and at the same time, not every organization has a consumer insights function. I think, you know, I'm privileged to work with Mondelez, who have quite big teams around the globe. You know, also working in consumer insights. But you're absolutely right. It's like marketing insights. You know, people coming and saying, what do you think? You are actually, right, you're responsible for the consumer, and people don't say it, but it's a high expectations. Yeah. But we can all, when we go to the next slide, which is an interesting one, when I ask you this question around a pen, I show you basically this pen. I can also show you something else. Yeah. So it's about, why do you like this pen? And finance would say maybe it's low cost, and then it's like, I don't know, the engineer would say it has a fine line. Yeah. And why this is so important maybe to show, is this cross functionality in an organization as well, to take all kind of feedback and insights on board, what people are seeing. I had, for example, a lot of consumer groups in the past, yeah, when I started my career, and invited, finance teams, and the finance teams had fantastic observations. Yeah, that's most often the people who have really, really great feeling, or they see maybe things others don't see. Yeah, because often, when you work in insights, when you work in marketing, you get also often quite siloed. You feel like you jump often to solutions already. You think you have seen it all, but we have all different lenses, and that's so important to take into consideration. Yeah. So if you go to the next slide, I have another little question for you. So we are moving a little bit into this kind of, okay, what is an insight? And here, when you look at that, which is the best insight you think? You can write it in the chat again. I can see that. Okay, amazing. Seems like some have attended my presentation before. Perfect. If you go to the next slide. Also, actually, what you think is, you can also, you're welcome, to chat in the chat and say, what, you have a different opinion on what is an insight. There are so many definitions on what is an insight. Yeah. We say, Mondelez, it has to have a real tension from the consumer, right? Because we're always after to solve a problem or need. But who knows? We can also enhance, experiences. We can make people's life better. Some of the life is already actually pretty good, right? And you want to maybe see more joy in your life. That's actually also valid. Yeah. But many times, it's quite obvious, that the insight can be quite obvious. What I like about an insight is they can be quite universal. It's sometimes not so complicated as we think. Yeah, a lot of consumers have the same type of need. Yeah, again, as we saw before from liquid death, it's about hydration. You need to drink water. You need to, when you do sport, when you do activity, you need to basically drink, right? But how you execute it, how you respond to that is different, and it's also maybe different target groups as well. Yeah, and sometimes I say, oh, you open the fridge, right, and the light goes on, and then it's actually when it's almost like that's the insight. Yeah. Or I like also when you, for example, combine the human centricity with aspiration, then it's also real, you can also create real growth. Yeah. So basically it's a discovery and fresh understanding about people. Yeah. And then, you embark on a journey to solve for that, to look for a solution. Yeah. Often, we jump into solutions, the brainstorms we have is like, oh yeah, but I think the consumer might like this, or they might actually like another line extension. Oh, they might like this flavor. Yeah. But try to take a step back. Often it's worthwhile to understand the real consumer need, and digging a little bit into more behavior. Yeah. So I would say behavior is here the keyword. Yeah. Going to the next slide. Going to the next. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Yes. So basically, C is good, but there is no attention. So it's also true that kids have appetite for fun. That's actually nice. Yeah. D is insightful, but it's not really such a problem. That Oreos are more than a cookie. Yeah. But E is kind of great because it's something, people are experiencing a joy deficit, also currently, that was something also after COVID, a lot. So it's like bringing the joy back. You saw also a lot of brands that brought the joy back for people, which was very interesting to see. Also many different expressions. Yeah. Currently, the world is very unstable. There is a lot of there's a lot of anxiety, for people. That there's actually for many people, it's not such an easy time. Yeah. And when there is not an easy time, it's actually people like comfort. They like things they know. They also like to go back. It's a bit nostalgic. Then they like to hold on. Yeah. And bringing back joy and bringing joy in people's life. Think about it. That can go in many different ways. It's not about an Oreo. Yeah. Oreo can be one of the answers, but it can be so many different answers. Yeah. What you can do. Yeah. If you think about it with a brand, a product, being playful, being, there can be really many expressions. Yeah. So I personally like that. I would call it's a universal insight, a good universal insight. Yeah. If we go to the next slide. Yeah, I have also an internal case study, a little bit. So that's from Oreo. Yeah. And what we actually found out, or discovered, and that's more of a fact, less of an insight, that 25 of the US population couldn't eat Oreo because they are celiac, actually, so hyperallergic, or they prefer to eat gluten-free. Yeah, so they're not really, I would call it allergic, but they want to avoid gluten, or they prefer basically to go for a different choice. And we also found out that these people were buying their own gluten-free labels, so which meant to a certain extent, there was a couple of years also ago, compromising on taste. Yeah. So, and the problem was that the consumers, they wanted the real Oreo experience, so they wanted actually, because why? There's now the insight behind that. And, when you say about the people, what we eat and finding the joy, it's a very big topic for consumers, when they have an allergy and they cannot, and for example, there is a meal on the table, there is a cake on the table, there is a Oreo on the table, yeah, and they cannot participate, to eat the Oreo together. That's a problem. Also, for example, when there's a birthday party, I had recently the case, with our daughter. She had a birthday party a couple of weeks ago, and she had a girl coming, and she's actually a celiac. And Victoria said to me, "Listen, Barbara," and that, by the way, I was going to the US to travel, and she said, "Please bring back from the US, because there are so many gluten-free snacks. Please bring back some snacks, because I don't want, that she feels excluded. I don't want, I want that we all eat the same snacks. I want that we eat all the same food, so we make a pizza, and for her, we make a gluten-free pizza. Yeah? So there is a kind, something from people, because it's around belonging, that they are left out. And that's very, very strong, and that's actually, I would say, a consumer problem on many, many levels. Yeah. So what we did is, we're starting to develop, Oreo gluten-free, as you well know, for those of you who are based in the US. And if you go to the next slide, we activated this in so many different, can go on. Yes, you have, that's what I was talking about, the Oreos, the real, and that was also, I think we came out of that also after, shortly kind of COVID time, after COVID time, and we did it very much on social. So we used this time also a different approach when it came to marketing. So it was almost running from itself, and when I may read out, this from this emergency department nurse. This has been a challenging time. So she was referring to COVID. I'm an emergency department nurse, and I have seen so much sadness this past year. This has made me appreciate the little things in life. Yesterday was one of these things. I think it's quite nice. There were a lot of, stories, there were a lot of stories about, now they can eat the Oreo with their family, everybody can sit on the table. Again, very, very simple. And you can say, oh, there is more and more allergies out there. Yes, there are. And actually there is a problem for a lot of people also out there, I would say, So yeah, I think it's a very nice story, of the Oreo gluten-free, also leveraging that and really making that something. So I like that example also a lot, and when we go to the next slide. Yeah, so from consumer satisfaction, again, very easy question. Who is responsible for being the consumer's advocate inside the company? So who is actually, I think we all are. I think you can, again, it's me, it's you. Everybody who is on the call has a responsibility, to be consumer centric, to ask, have we consulted the consumer? Is this something, do we have consumer evidence here? Yeah. So we can all play a role here, by also asking the question. If you go to the next slide, and I want to use next one, yes. So we can go to the next one. I want to use the last 10 minutes. I really would like to use a bit on some practicality, understanding the consumer, and from doing, observing, asking, giving you a bit of a giving you some kind of things, what also I have been doing in SnackFutures in the last couple of years. Not always going to a third party, not always actually commissioning some work, but also doing it ourselves as a team. So understanding the consumer, as we say, know what the problem are, what is the need. Use your expertise to solve them better than anyone else can. And maybe some of you have a lot of experience. They have a lot of experience in the industry. You can basically pair the insight with your experience, but also with your intuition as well, and you can form an hypothesis, and then you can basically go out and say, I might actually ask a handful of consumers. So when we go to the next slide, so what can you do? Never forget, again, depending on where you work, I don't know if I would work for, saying Tesla, I don't know if I would, I'm the consumer because I don't have a Tesla, but in some cases, right, we are the consumer. I'm a milk consumer since I was a child. So I can say, I'm a milk consumer. I can use the product. In fact, I have to admit, I eat chocolate almost every day. I know it's so bad since I'm working in the company in that for 26 years. So, and then you can say, shop the channel, right? You can go out and you can go to a store. And you can do this formally. You can also let people try your product, where you think, oh, this might be actually the target. That might be actually the target for my product. So you get also a feeling for that. And when you eat, pay attention to your feelings, with your brain and your heart. What do you experience? Keep notes for that moment of truth. Moment of truth is really when you go to a store, right? So when you see your product, do you find the brand or the product? Do you find the brand or the product where you expected it to be, or is it somewhere else? And why is it there? So these are all things you can do. You might be the consumer, and you might not be the consumer, but then try to put yourself into consumer shoes. And if you go to the next slide, this is something I used to do for many years when we did when I was working in Shopper Insights, and we did a lot of we were trying to embed shopping understanding in the organization, becoming also more a little bit shopper centric, acting consumer and shopper. So what's very nice is take as much money as a target consumer would have. So I used to do this with people, with teams, and I gave them, on average in Europe, I gave them, I'm converting it, maybe $8, okay? And I asked them with $8 to buy a meal for a family of 4 people, okay? And they have maybe, I put sometimes a time frame, so maybe you're stressed, right, because you're after work or so, or whatever, so maybe you rush home. So they have a time to get into the store, spending $8 for dinner tonight. So what would you buy? I have a universal insight here, I can tell you. I've done this in China, I have done it in South Africa, I have done it in Argentina, I have done it in the US. Most teams bought a pack of pasta. Most teams bought then also a jar, non-branded jar of tomato sauce. So that seems a meal where you can say, you know what, you cook pasta, everybody has enough, then the team member said, okay, you know what, we're not buying a juice tonight, we're drinking water for dinner. But the reaction from actually teams working in Mondelez is like very interesting. Marketing teams is because when I said it's $8, they were like, buying a meal for 4, they were like, but that's not enough money. And then I said, yeah, but most people, they don't have more, they just have the $8. Yeah. So it's also, again, putting yourself into people's shoes. Yeah. If you have maybe a little budget or you're on a tiny budget, and again, we are also not only in the US, everywhere in the world, we're going through an inflation. You need to watch your budget, right? You need to be cautious. You still want to do better, right? You still don't want to be that unhealthy, but you want to watch a bit your budget. So I think it's a good exercise, actually. I can highly recommend it. If you go to the next slide, and I know I have a couple of minutes left, so I'm speeding up because I also want you to ask some questions, is observing. Yeah. And here, just to relate to the example I showed you before from Liquid Death, right? When the founder observed, he even didn't ask maybe people, maybe he asked them at the concert, I don't know, yeah, but he observed them. Yeah. It was all about observing how people behave. Yeah. And that can be quite powerful. You can also watch consumers when they're shopping. You can also watch them when they're eating. Yeah. When you go to the next slide, yeah, this is nice. Have lunch with someone you usually don't eat. So today we had the Futures Day. I have my daughter sitting outside. She's waiting for me, but I promised her we go afterwards for a burger because here it's 6:45, so it's in the evening. But we were together with the kids today. We showed our children how it is to work in Mondelez. We had workshops with them. We had even an Oreo man, kind of guiding them through all the hallways. They had lunch, and then they finished up with a little bit of reflection. So it's quite nice. Maybe you have lunch with somebody you usually don't eat with. That can be quite insightful as well. Yeah. When we go to the next slide, yeah, discuss friends, family. I'm sure when you run your own businesses, super exciting. You discuss a lot with your friends, you discuss a lot with your family. Social media, what are people saying about your brand or your product? Employees, suppliers, yeah. And I think one point to point out here is also often listen for what they don't say. Yeah, that's also can be also quite powerful. Yeah. Often it's not about what people say, but also listening between the lines, maybe what they don't say. Yeah. If you go to the next slide, yeah, they're kind of, if you're interested, there are a lot of partners out there. In the US, you can work, there's Suzy, there's OneQ, there's a lot of social listening platforms as well. You can go to look at online reviews. Yeah. So there's a lot basically you can do also on a lower budget. Yeah. And also be creative. Yeah. When we go to the next slide, yeah, you can also talk to the stocker. So when you're shopping, visit your category. Maybe there's somebody in the store. Maybe you can ask the person. Yeah, maybe there is something. A point of view. What's the point of view? What moves? What sits? What they've seen lately. Yeah, is there anything new they've seen? What is actually moving dramatically fast? Yeah? Is there anything what has been out of stock all the time and why? Yeah. So involve people in a conversation. Good. Advocate. Ask better questions. What is actually, I wish I would have done much better in the beginning of my career when I started in Insights or when I started to work here, is like asking better questions and also asking sometimes the uncomfortable questions. Really ask better questions. It's very important, keeping really consumer at the center. Yeah. And then share your ideas. Yeah. Also important. So wrapping up. Yeah. If your consumer can be happier, say so. Also, if it's not your functional expertise, So if you work in a company and you work not in marketing and you work not in insights, yeah, and you see something, you observe something, and you've seen it a couple of times, share it. It's important because it might be a theme, yeah. You can also use your personal opinion as a hypothesis and test it with others, Do that. Again, formulate hypothesis. Very, very important. It's as important as asking the questions, yeah. Offer possible solutions if you can. If you can't, engage the team, yeah. But don't advocate for the solutions, advocate really for the consumer joy. Yeah, don't jump. I mean, there might be solutions. You need to have solutions, obviously. There is execution, and it's very powerful, yeah. But try really first to understand a little bit better beyond, yeah. So that is what I would say. I know it's not easy. We all do that. In our company, we often, jump into very quickly into solutions because we have so much expertise. We say like, oh, we think we should do this or that. Yeah. And if I finish off with the last slide, yeah, you will never know all you want. And I tell you, that's fine. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's actually better to, what I sense is sometimes better to maybe know less. The things will always change in a world where we live in, things will change, yeah, if you want it or not, yeah. But always keep the consumer at the core and figure out what must be true. I can just tell you that, I think what I want to give you and what is really, I hope I try to convey with this little kind of webinar, like presentation is, keep the consumer at the core, keeping the consumer mind, not forgetting them, working advance, presentations. I have seen presentations, big, great strategic presentations, and there was not a single word about the consumer, interesting, yeah. So how do we know? How do we know anybody wants that? How do we know anybody will purchase it? How do we, yeah, how will we actually ever experience that, And then, what also happens, we launch something, and then we discover, okay, we could have taken more consumer feedback on board. We could have maybe done it a little bit better, yeah. And then, taking it away from the market, bringing it back is often actually quite painful and almost actually impossible. So sometimes asking these little questions can help you and can also save you, I would say, quite some money as well, yeah. Yeah, so I'm at the end of my presentation, and I talked a lot, and I would love if you have some questions. I would love if you have some comments, some statements. Yeah, if you maybe also have something for me to share, that would be great. Yeah, so thank you for giving me the chance tonight. I always enjoy talking about my passion, the consumer. So.
Thank you, Barbara. Of course, if you can raise your hand, we'll call on you. If you'd like to just put a question in the chat for Barbara. Barbara, I think it's interesting for those of them who on the call who are part of Brandjectory, they know one of my mantras when I talk to them about their consumer is
Yeah.
just the simple question: why does the customer pick you off the shelf? They have lots of available products. I always try to put into everyone's head, what is that reason they select you? It's more than just product ingredients. It's more than just, convenience. There's some reason that you connect with a client, and why are they picking you, and what can you do to continue to promote and show that you can grow them because you know that. And I think that's one of the things that you talked about, and maybe that's another just insight you want to comment on in terms of those choices that customers have when they do see all the products on the shelf.
Yeah, I think when it's on the shelf, it's really the moment of truth, right? It's what we call this moment of truth. If you're in front of the shelf, yeah, there's many choices. I would say the reason to believe is really important. There's also obviously packaging principles, architecture, right? And you see a lot of packaging, and it's quite, I would say, crowded. But you need to always keep in mind when you're in a store, you have a couple of seconds, and no consumer will spend, half an hour in front of the shelf and picking up, packages and comparing them. Maybe out of 100, there's one consumer or shopper, they will do that, yeah. So it needs to be also already on the packaging very clear. It needs to call for an action, yeah. So the call to action must be so clear to say, okay, you know what, there is something what get me interested. There is something, for me, okay, why I pick up this brand. And if you can convey that, on a packaging already, that's actually the best. I would almost say that's the best advertising. Advertising for me is not, that's actually already great, because then that will help you a lot. And then of course there are things like if you're in the diamond, right, in a store, there's a special position in the eye level, right? If they cannot find it, they cannot buy you, right? I mean, if they're up somewhere, and I'm not that tall, and I cannot pick up, the brand of product, that's a problem. I will probably not pick it up, yeah. So there's a couple of things, also to keep in mind, and they are not complicated. They are very, very simple, but often you go and you say, oh, that's interesting, that has not been considered, yeah.
And you know, that's also interesting. I'm looking to see if there's any questions in the chat here, but it's also interesting because you have to meet the customer where they are, right?
Yeah.
If you're a product that they're grabbing on the run, you have to be where they go when they're on the run. If they're a product that they're grabbing on the way to school for their kids, you have to think about where is that going to be. You have to start thinking about where that customer's life takes them if you're going to be where they're going to be when they need you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's the physical availability, but then also, there's the mental availability as well, so it's both. It's a combination, but I agree, in store, they will meet you. That's the moment of truth. Yeah.
We have
So,
a question from Dave Peters, Element Snacks, chocolate rice cakes. Do you have any suggestions for inexpensive concept testing tools and processes?
Yes, I have. I don't know, Dave, where you're based.
He's in the
I,
U.S.
yes, yeah. So I would say there is a company called, and again, it's not advertising, it's really what I believe, and I can really give very good recommendations here, called 1Q. And actually, it's Laurie. I can connect you if you want. So the company is called 1Q. And what I like about the company is it's really super cool for actually, early startups and founders, because there's no subscription connected. You can basically buy a credit of $200 or $400. You can feel the concept. You can also, for example, it helps you a lot when you have upcoming customer conversations and you want to, for example, know, okay, I have this idea, right? But I want to get a purchase intent among Costco shoppers or among Kroger shoppers. Yeah. So you feel that, and it's very, very, I would say it's very inexpensive. Yeah. But it gives you a great learning. It gives you a concept score. You can take that score. We have actually even success stories with Laurie together. She presented to us for our collab program, where there were companies, they saved a lot of money. It helped them a lot. They got actually not nationwide, but they get really good distribution because they use that tool. So that's, I would say I can highly recommend. There's obviously also Suzy in the US. There are many platform companies out there. They are mostly also technology companies. Yeah. But if you're interested, reach out to me. I work also a lot with new companies, with young companies as well. There is a company also called Bolt. So if anybody's interested in AI generated qualitative research, it's also great, very low cost. They're doing basically in-depth interviews, qualitative, but it's more generated with AI. So it's I think it's also super interesting, but with real consumers, yeah, with your target consumer, yeah. I hope that's
Barbara,
helpful. Yeah.
Barbara, is it okay if I share your email in the chat?
Yeah. Please
Okay.
reach out. Whenever I can help, I'm happy to help, because there's really a lot of great. I mean, they are technology, but they are all also startups themselves. Yeah. In the research industry, and I think there's a lot of great companies out there. So it's not always, the big research companies as we work, but also we in Mondelez, we are trying to experiment a lot. We're trying to test and learn a lot, with smaller vendors, because we also appreciate the agility and the fastness. Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
So what do you do with the emerging brands? What do you personally do? How do you help them?
So we have two, I would say, camps. So we have our Thomas, as you well know, and also Moritz well knows, we have our collab program. So that's the accelerator we run this year for the third time. So there we recruited companies, we gave some criteria, so with the early stage companies, and they could apply to our collab program. So we selected this year 9 companies, yeah. And this is a program where it's around 8 weeks. I think some of the collab participants are also on the call today. And we had mentoring. So we had a mentoring, but we had also we also put in some research elements. So basically, they could test the brand, the product with an agency. Then we had also another agency taking part. So it was a combination of all areas, of Mondelez supply chain sessions, packaging sessions, R&D sessions. So basically, it's a kind of a program that goes over a couple of weeks. And obviously then, you know, the collab members, they can stay in touch, but we also stay in touch with them as well, you know. So that's, I would say, more early stage. But then also up to date, we have done a handful of investments. So we have invested in 5 companies. So we call them our portfolio companies. And with those companies, they are not so early stage anymore because they're a little bit bigger. And with those companies, we have very tight relationships. You know, I'm with some of those companies in contact on a daily basis. We're doing a lot of strategic work with them. It's a collaboration. You know, there are some questions we need to solve, for example, around the consumer target. So we are working with them, but we're also working on a path to scale, if that makes sense, yeah, as well. But again, we are strategic, so it's not just about, for us, the money we invested in. We also want to really establish a good relationship with the company as well. But I would say we're doing a lot. You know, we're supporting them a lot. We're doing a lot. We're answering questions from all types of areas, not only marketing and insights. Yeah.
And participating with Brandjectory, which we thank you for.
Exactly. As I said, you know, so there is a lot of great partners. I think we really enjoyed it. I think hopefully our collab participants enjoyed it as well. But I think so, you know, I got a message before, you know, missing, you know, the great meetings and collaboration. But obviously, you know, then over the years, you know, it's now year 3. There's also great, I would say, network, what starts to create a bit in the industry as well. Yeah. So people know us, they can reach out. I have a lot of conversations with founders, guiding, giving them tips as my time allows, of course, but that's actually our job. Yeah.
So we have one last question here, which we probably have time for very quickly from Matt Board. He mentioning that, you know, habits and rituals are the biggest challenges to changing consumer behavior, and how would you recommend an emerging brand actually sort of I guess kind of crack the code and get those consumers to try and be aware and purchase new products?
Yeah, I would also say it's really I think it's first of all, it's a huge opportunity that consumer behaviors are changing. They are changing not overnight. They are changing small in baby steps, but significant. So if you talk about topics, you know, sustainability, other topics, so that would be an own webinar. But I think that's a huge opportunity because that wasn't the case in the past. And it was very difficult to change consumer behavior with a new kind of product or proposition. But that actually provokes the most, you know, return on investment, because that's the biggest, you know, gain you can have, rather than building on a behavior. Because in the past, it was like rather more building on people's behaviors, right? But it's important that you stay close. You know, I think it's always great, you know, using research tools. And I'm a researcher myself, you know, asking people questions, but obviously you need to know how to ask the question. Yeah. But don't forget it's claimed. You know, people claim a lot. You know, you ask them and they say, yeah, of course I bet it. Yeah, of course I will be healthy. Yes, of course I will go tomorrow to the gym, you know. But it's an intent. It's maybe not the reality on what happened. So basically behavioral is really to stay closer and actually talk to people over a period of time. Behavior would also be when you change your testing habit. For example, putting up a website, you know, testing your maybe ads on a website. We call that A/B testing. Yeah, getting consumers on a website, you know, and they can maybe click and they can basically get your brand or product in a cart. But then you tell them, it's not yet available. You know, it will be actually will inform you when it's available. But we would like to get some actually insights from you on how your experience was. That is actually behavior. Yeah, that is going more into behavior. And, you know, we as an industry have to shift from, you know, asking people quite direct, you know, from more getting again into people's lives. Yeah, getting into people's home. You know, when I started more than 20 years ago, we used to go in I remember in Ukraine, Russia, Romania, Bulgaria. I used to go into many people's homes. I also used to go into people's homes in the US, you know, and there's differences, you know, if you go to a home in former Eastern Europe, and then you go to a home in Europe, and then you go actually to a home in the US, you know, also depending if it's East, West Coast, because there's also huge differences as well. You know what I mean? It's like getting almost into people's lives again, I know there's a lot of technology, we're using a lot of technology, and that's great, yeah. But stay close. Look what people have in their cupboards, you know. You might be surprised what they don't have in their cupboards, yeah. So what you thought they have in their cupboards, yeah. That used to be quite a powerful method, yeah. And I think maybe technology and humanity and, you know, combining that will be a very powerful source in the future for everybody. And with that, I can close.
I think that's a great way to wrap this up, Barbara. We thank you so much for being here. We thank Mondelez for their support of Brandjectory. Thank everyone for being here, from myself and my partners, Michael Movitz and my wife, Susan Bryanton. We thank you all. And again, if you want to know more about Brandjectory, it's tom@brandjectory.com, michael@brandjectory.com. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Barbara's email is in the chat. She seems happy to have you reach out to her with questions. So please do, and we will be making this video available. So we thank you all for being here. We wish you all a great day. Barbara, we thank you once again.
Yeah, thank
And
you. It was a
thanks,
pleasure.
everybody.
Thank you
Goodbye. Have a
so
great
much for
day.
having me. See you soon. Bye.